Ready? Okay.
Just in my
Everyone, we're going to call to order this meeting of the San Bernardino County Advisory Redistricting Commission today, Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. This evening, we would like to welcome Pastor Bob Ruiz from Calvary Chapel in Rialto, who will lead us in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Bob Ruiz has been a pastor at Calvary Chapel, Rialto since 2015. He has spent the last 25 years being a pastor and planting new churches along the way. Thank you, Pastor Bob Ruiz. We appreciate you joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. Please stand with me. Let's close our eyes and pray to the Lord. Lord Jesus, we want to thank you for the privilege of living in a country where prayer is not only allowed, but it is still encouraged. A lot of people that don't understand it, Lord, still know that there's something good in it. And so they look to us, Lord, men of God, women of God, people who love you, people who know you. And Lord, they ask for prayer. And so we are coming before you, Lord, as a people who need so many things, Lord. First of all, we need protection. We do ask for protection from this virus that's going around, this pandemic. Lord, we ask that you'd protect those we love, those within our communities. Give us wisdom as we deal with it and as we take precautions. Lord, help us to move in a way that's pleasing to you. We ask, Lord, especially this evening for wisdom, that the members, Lord, that are here, the officials who are going to be making decisions that are going to affect millions of people, Lord, they need wisdom, that they would only do things that are in the best interest of the people they're representing. Lord, I pray that your love, your grace, and your mercy would shine, and you would rule in the hearts of everyone, Lord, as they look to truly serve this community. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Please face the flag, hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you, Pastor. At this time, we will take roll call of the commission. Madam Secretary, Ms. Monell.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. You can reply with present or here. Judge Davis? Vice Chairman King?
Here.
Judge King?
Present.
Commissioner Crutchfield?
Present.
Commissioner Little?
I'm here.
Commissioner Basley?
Present.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Present.
Commissioner Anderson?
Present.
Commissioner Shannon? Commissioner Reynolds?
Here.
Commissioner Hazlett?
I'm here.
Commissioner Wilson? Present. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Monell. That concludes the roll call. At this time, we will review and move to approve the August 26th meeting minutes. Do we have any requests to speak?
No, Madam Vice Chair.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries to approve the August 26th meeting minutes. Now, presenter Julie Serber, will provide a report to the commission.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Recently, the statewide database website was updated to indicate that the anticipated release date of the statewide database that includes the adjusted data for the inmate reallocation is scheduled to be released on September 20th. So assuming the state actually does release that data on September 20th, the Commission can begin releasing draft maps on or after September 27th, or 1 week after the waiting period required under the Elections Code. Therefore, at the September 29th meeting, the Commission could begin drawing draft maps. However, note that preset draft maps cannot be considered at the September 29th meeting because under the elections code, the agenda must be posted 5 days before the meeting, and that would cut into the 1 week waiting period required by the elections code. That completes my report. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Do any of the commission members or alternate commissioners have any comments or questions for the server? Okay, don't see anyone. So that will conclude the server's report. Next on the agenda, Mr. Max Rexroad from Redistricting Insights will provide a presentation to the commission on options for formulating draft maps.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So at the last commission, which Fabian and I watched virtually at your meeting, at your previous meeting, one of the commissioners asked about the process by which you would go about drawing maps eventually. And so I have just a one slide deck that's up for you with some of your different options, but it is something that this commission as a whole needs to decide in terms of how you want to do it. So I thought I would go over some of the different options that you have and maybe talk about some of the best practices that we've seen around the state. There is no one particular way to be able to do this, and you need to figure out what kind of process works for you. But there are basically 4 different ways that people, as I currently see it, that maps could be formulated and put into consideration. First is the individual submissions. So right now, the data that's up on the county website with the Maptitude redistricting tool that's available to the public has the old data. Here within the next week or so, all of that data will be updated to the most current information we have, and then shortly after, similar to the release date, actually I just learned that today from your county council's report, in terms of the new update from the statewide database, shortly after that happens, we'll update that data again with those prisoner populations that are zeroed out. But you're going to get people who draw individual maps, who are going to submit them to the commission. It actually comes through, and we'll keep you advised on when those come in. You also could go through the process of using that tool to attempt to draw a map, if that's something that you might like to do. You also have the option of potentially having individual line drawing sessions. So if individual commissioners wanted to meet with Fabian or Eddie or myself, we could sit down and walk you through, and you could consider and lay out the different factors and the information that you've heard and attempt to be able to come up with a map on your own. That is an option available to you. I will tell you that some jurisdictions don't encourage that activity. They'd like all of that done in open session and not done in a private individual meeting with commissioners, but that's a process that's open to you. The other is you could do group line drawing discussions. So we could do a meeting here where we could simply throw up the data on the overhead projectors, and any one of you could guide one of our staff members through the process of coming up with an individual map. And 2 meetings ago, Mr. Valdez showed you the process by which you would use that system. We have a little bit different version of Maptitude, but we would be able to go through that. You could simply say, let's start with Needles, and let's draw a district starting from Needles. And you could go back through and go forward and backwards, and we could adjust accordingly, and we could create 1 or more maps in that way. And the final way is, and I just have a quick story for you, is public input map considerations. And you're probably going to end up in the course of this process with different groups that come forward with not just a map of their individual area and district or their individual community of interest, but they might have a full and complete map. It could be a community group or an individual, and they're going to come here and stand at the podium and say, this is the map that we would like. It could be an individual submission or whatever else. 10 years ago in the city of Elk Grove, we probably had 40 individual commission submissions on our redistricting map commission submissions. One gentleman who was sitting in the front row, he came to all the meetings, and he, actually it was something very similar to a Thomas guide, if you all remember those before Google Maps and everything else, and a Sharpie had basically listened to all the comments, he looked at all the numbers, and he drew a map with a Sharpie on basically a map and said, this is what I'd like considered. And when the city council asked me, which maps worked and reflected the different communities of interest that were mentioned in all of our hearings, I said, look, this gentleman here did it with a Sharpie, right? He was able to do this, and we were able to represent that on the computer screen, and That map is what's currently is governing the city of Elk Grove right now in terms of their council districts. He was able to do it that way. And we'll be able to take those in. If somebody does come in with a Sharpie and a map, we will be able to, or a computer-generated system, we'll take it and put it into the system and be able to analyze that. But I would say, and County Council's report was excellent today and perfect timing in regards to the timing in which you would be able to start drawing maps, which you shouldn't do right now yet, or not quite yet. But then the other thing to consider is you do want to put out, at some point, you want to do draft maps, but there are a lot of jurisdictions around the state that are waiting until basically different communities have had the opportunity to come in and give testimony regarding of communities of interest before commissions put pen to paper. And so I don't know when you want to do that, that process is, but you should think about the idea that you want to encourage participation. And by the way, draft maps is what usually triggers a lot more people wanting to be involved. But you have to weigh that against the idea that if you all create a commission, or this commission creates a map, in some ways it becomes the default. And so some people will say, well, I don't like that, or it's already done, they're not listening to my testimony. So you all need to weigh that in terms of how you come up with the process by the way you want to do that. And that, once again, is entirely up to you. So I offer those 4 options for you in this process and how you do that. We're personally, maybe not indifferent, but we want to be able to support you in the way that you decide you want to do that. I know that at least one commissioner suggested that they were going to wait until far later to be able to do that. That's fine, but it's the role that you all want to play. But I would encourage you that even until the very end of this process, and the maps all have to be posted, the process should be as open and transparent as possible. So if somebody walks in and they have a map on a napkin from in and out, we should be able to put it in the computer and have it open for consideration to be able to do that. At no point should we vest in any one map until you have to decide what you're going to send on to the Board of Supervisors. Openness and transparency is the key in this process, and I firmly believe that.
Thank you for your presentation. Do any of the commission members have any comments or questions for Matt Patrick? Yes.
Yeah,
Commissioner Bazell.
yeah. When
Yes,
you
sir.
mentioned that you analyze them, will you vet the ones that are coming in from the community that are posted on the site as far as, some of the initial hurdles that need to be passed, they're contiguous, so on and so forth, or what did you mean by analyze them?
So basically, we would work with you had a presentation at your last meeting from the VRA Council, and so my staff and I wouldn't be making any judgments on that. We would simply be passing that data along for other people to look at. But for example, a perfect example would be if somebody made a submission, we would certainly want you all to be aware of every submission, right? We're not trying to hide something from you, but if somebody drew 8 different supervisor districts in the county, which is, people sometimes do that, we would simply say we do not recommend this map because it has too many districts, or it has non-contiguous areas, or the population deviation exceeds anything that's even close to legal. So those sorts of things. And so the commission could choose to vote on anything, but I would have a responsibility to come up and say, look, you shouldn't consider this map, it doesn't even meet the original threshold. And before we would do that, we would run that by county council and Pam and others and make sure we're all in agreement that we can't possibly recommend this map to you because it fails to meet basic redistricting criteria. So that's the level of analysis. But if it meets population equality and county council signs off on it for the Voting Rights Act, then at that point, you get down to communities of interest. That's somewhat of a subjective analysis, and then at that point, it would be open for your consideration if it were to clear those hurdles to be able to get there, and then you could decide to pass it on to the Board of Supervisors or not.
Yeah, and this may have been asked before, I just don't recall. Are the maps that individuals in the community or groups in the community post, are they accessible by everybody? Not only the commission, but by everybody as they post them?
Well, I believe that the intent is the idea of posting public maps, and I believe that we would have all those posted. So if a map was submitted and it was number 8 that was submitted by a different group, that it would have number 8. We'd have the basic breakdown of population equality and some of the ethnic numbers and matrix that would be needed for a Voting Rights Act analysis, and then that information would be posted and available to everyone once it's submitted. And certainly it would be available to you as the commission and the public as you go through the process.
Thank you.
Pam, did I misstate any of that? I think that's that's the process.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the other commissioners or alternate commissioners have any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Trujillo.
This question, how will the maps be discussed? Will they be discussed in an open forum?
Well, yes, they always should be, right? That's how you would end up doing your deliberations in terms of individual maps that community groups might come forward. However they do that, that may not be an open session. They would come up and either offer them through the online portal, or they would present them here in front of you. And potentially they would either send us map files, or we would try to recreate them. But then at some point, you all have to decide the process by which you go through to not only draw maps, but deliberate in terms of which maps you decide to go and pass on to the board. It's my understanding that you have a requirement to submit at least 2 to the board for their consideration. And so how you do that is going to be determined by your commission in terms of the process by which you whittle those down, whether you make a motion for 2 maps or 3 maps or whatever. Eventually you have to get your vote threshold to move those on to the board. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, it did. We're going to have.
I feel like I didn't answer your question very well, actually, but that's the right answer, I think.
Is that we're going to have a discussion on how we receive the maps, how we discuss the maps, and how we're going to deliberate on those maps.
Anyway, can I add one other thing, please? So I think you all should have a conversation, or my recommendation to you is whether you want to do individual line drawing sessions. There are some communities and commissions that we've worked with who do not want that. They want all of that. They do not want individual commissioners creating their own maps. If they do that, they want it here in open session and like that, and done that way. But whatever you all decide we'll support, but the group as a whole, in my experience, should make that decision and decide whether you want individual meetings or whether you want to do it all in the group, because you shouldn't have different people playing by different rules. That would be my recommendation to you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
Madam Vice Chair, I think it would be this is a perfect opportunity maybe to take a recommendation from one of the commissioners on how they would like to respond to the 4 choices.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Do any of the commissioners or alternate commissioners? Oh.
I'd appreciate that too, Ms. Williams. Say that again, but a little louder.
Sure. I think I would make a recommendation to the Vice Chair to entertain a conversation amongst the commissioners as to which of the 4 options that they would like to consider as we move forward on how we're going to formulate maps as a commission.
And I agree with that. So if I would like to open up for comment to the commissioners and or alternate commissioners, please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Yes, Judge Keenan.
Yes, I don't know if others feel totally adept with technology, but I do not.
Okay.
And I've tried to work with the map system that they have, or the program, and I'm not being as successful as I would like to be, and I think I should be. So I intend to contact either Mr. Rexroad or Mr. Valdez and get some assistance. And I feel like that's very important for me to understand how these maps go together and how we determine exactly whether or not our proposed sections are going to be viable with looking at all the various criteria. And I want to be able to do that before we come into this arena, so that I'm comfortable with it and I know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I won't feel prepared to address it and discuss it with other input.
Okay. I believe that information was, or their contact information was shared through email with the commission.
That is correct. It was sent out. That is correct. That was sent out this morning.
So I would encourage you and anyone to contact them for the technical help. And I would like, looking at the 4 options for how to draw maps, I would just like to kind of put out there to the group that I think the group line drawing sessions is most likely the most transparent and open way to go about this.
I agree. I really prefer the group line drawing session.
I agree also.
May I just make one comment? Just really quickly, you don't have to pick among the four. So it's, you're going to get public input from, that's going to happen. So we've already set that up, that's going to happen. And you're going to get, basically, the real question is how you want to actually, as a commission, draw your maps. You're going to have these others to consider, but how you want to draw your maps. So I just want to make clear, you don't have to pick one of the four, so.
I guess I'll rephrase my answer, because that's kind of what I was trying to say, that for the group, including public input and whatnot, I think group line drawing is the most open and transparent. So I would just like to put that on the record as a comment.
May I, Mr. Rexroth, just to clarify, these are how we create maps amongst ourselves. In other words, we're going to receive individual submissions, as you said, and we're going to consider all of those. We're not going to turn them down unless they're non-compliant, as you described earlier. But when you say individual submission on your card or your PowerPoint, you mean like one of the commission members comes up with a map and shows up?
Yeah, so you're going to end up with individual submissions, largely maybe I should have labeled that differently, but basically that was basically using the online portal, and you're going to get some to do that. But you're also going to have, for public input submissions, you're going to have folks who come to your meetings with maps, maybe only of one district, maybe not a whole map. It may just be, I just want this one district, 1/5 of the county to look like this, or individual communities of interest. And so you're going to take that information through the normal public process. The real choice is, and you may, the answer to the question I was trying to address today is how do you all get to your map level? And so it may be choosing among those, but then for the individual or the group, how do you all want to do that process of creating your own maps? And maybe you do now, or maybe you don't. Maybe you want to wait. But that's up to you. But you should make that decision.
So unlike us, you've got experience seeing a lot of other commissions doing this. So maybe you could share some thoughts of that. But I'm thinking we're going to end up with a good number of submissions, and maybe to start with, and then we can discuss those in a group line drawing session and make adjustments if, or
It's
take
possible.
some from one map and some from another map and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it's possible that over the course of this process that you end up with 30, 40, 50 different submissions, and they represent basically all the different options except for a few adjustments here and there that you all might like to make of community interest. And you may say, well, let's consider map 24 and make minor adjustments off something that's already been submitted. Or maybe you want to create something from whole cloth on your own, either individually or on a group basis.
And that answers my question. I appreciate it, Mr. Rexroth.
Thank you, Commissioner Lowe, for your comments. Open the floor back up to comments or questions from the commissioners or alternate commissioners. Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm, trying to, again, it's a continuing theme from the last meeting, and trying to struggle with this. The idea is to try to get as much public input as possible before we start, but you can't start, you won't get public input until you've already started. So I'm wrestling with this in my mind. But given that as of September 20th, I believe that's the goal for the state, or to have those numbers out, is there some way that we can really get out to the public at that point or before that information will be available, and then at least we can start seeing, as of the 20th, some maps that would be on the site, so we get an idea of how much public input we're going to get, and maybe we can start getting a feel of which way to go, or how many people are interested in. I'm trying to balance getting as much community involvement as possible and not starting, but yet, so that's what's going on in my mind. So I'm not sure what the plan is there to get out the word that as of September 20th, those maps will be, the numbers will be good and you can start.
Absolutely, Commissioner. We will work with our PIO team to be able to, now that we have that information from council, to be able to get that out to the public. The data is uploaded and map drawing is encouraged, and encouraged to also be submitted to the commission for consideration. So we'll add that to our outreach. We do considerable amount of outreach for each of these meetings, and so we will add that as a component to the communication.
And then my question as a follow-up to council would be, if, I know we can't have an official map that we're discussing, but is it possible to at least have presentations between, well, I guess there may be one meeting, 2 meetings, I'm not sure, where at least we get an idea of what the public has submitted up to that point. So somebody can say, this is what's been submitted, this is what we're looking at, this is how we vet, without, officially discussing, oh, this is good or not good, but getting an idea of what people are starting to give us input with. If you understand my questions, right? I'm trying not to, I'd like to get going as quickly as possible and let the public know that we're considering their options as early as possible, but I understand there's this problem of if we start looking at a particular suggestion and we start vetting that particular suggestion, then maybe we've crossed the line. So I'm trying to figure out how we can still get the information as a presentation starting after the 20th without saying, oh, okay, this is an official one that we're thinking about.
So we can, at any time between now and then, can receive any kind of public comment from someone who wants to provide input on, for example, communities of interest or things like that. But as far as the commission as a whole considering maps, the problem is you have to post it to comply with the notice requirements in order to consider it at a public meeting. And that's going to violate the elections code, which requires us to wait until September 27th. After that point in time, you can certainly consider any of the maps that are submitted through that. But I think because of the interaction between the requirement to post what you consider, that becomes problematic to do that beforehand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for clarification, Ms. Serban. Commissioner Mazel, do you have any other questions or comments?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Hazel?
Hazlett.
Hazlett, I apologize.
I think Mike asked this question for me, just because I don't do it. So, looking at the, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, here.
So looking at the calendar of dates, you're saying to us then, County Council, you're saying to us that we cannot actually look at a map at a meeting that we already have on the calendar until October 6th.
So at the meeting of the 29th, then you could begin drawing maps. But because of the timing, with the date the meetings are set, it would be, you're correct, the meeting in October, where you would start looking at submitted maps that would be agendized for you to consider.
And we will be in different communities, so I'd like to make a recommendation to the vice chair that perhaps we have a meeting that is just set aside for us to actually do a group drawing of this as a commission that we're offering everybody to come to. Because if you look at this, we're going to be under a crunch. From the 6th, we have 3 meetings before we are then back in the hands of the Board of Supervisors, if I'm not wrong in this. And then that we turn back over to the Board of Supervisors. To me, that's just a very short amount of time for us to get together, vet possibly 40-plus maps, according to your estimation, in our big county. And that's my concern, is we're going to have a lot of data to go through. And I'm with Judge, I've been playing with that tool, and I'm a techie. It's hard. So I need to have a little bit of a tutorial, because I can't seem to get the right, formulation together on this. And so it seems like I'm not as precise in my line drawing, or else my eyes are really bad, and I can't see delineations of natural landmarks versus county or city boundaries and those types of things. So it may just be that I need a bigger screen, but I'm having a little bit of issues here. So my recommendation is not only do we set aside the time, but we also create an independent meeting that we are just looking at maps, data, and a group line drawing session.
Okay, thank you for that recommendation. Should we make a motion on that, or?
We've had a discussion of several different suggestions, and so I think for any of them to be implemented, we need to have a motion, a second, and a vote.
Okay.
So, you know, if someone wants to make a motion and a second on the various different items we've discussed, that would be appropriate.
Okay. So I guess we should start, let's start with Commissioner Hazlett's recommendation to have a additional meeting scheduled that would be at the chambers for the county, and based on drawing maps, so that would be after October 6th, I believe.
Can I just ask for a point of clarification? Is this an additional meeting in addition to these, or do you want to agendize the map drawing at one of these meetings already scheduled?
I suggest that we do it at the county council chambers so that it's an independent space or it's a collective space and not in a jurisdiction.
Okay.
That way, they take
So-
away from communities of interest. I'd like to have something that is set aside just for us.
An additional meeting in the Board of Supervisors chambers.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it, thank you.
But I don't think I can make a motion, I think that.
Understood. I just want to clarify, just for.
Yes. So would a commissioner like to make a motion to have an additional meeting set at County Board of Supervisors Chambers for the process of a group line drawing session?
I make that motion.
And may I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor,
So
please?
wait, discussion.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
How does this implicate the Brown Act? And
You mean the meeting that we would have at the County Government Center would be an open Brown Act notice meeting?
okay, so it's simply suggesting that we add one more meeting to this group of meetings that are set. Does it by chance make sense to go ahead with the schedule we have, and October 6th is kind of the magic date when we can start looking at maps, and then if we need more, set it at that point in time? I mean, we don't know what we're going to be facing yet in terms of maps.
Well, I think.
Yes, Commissioner Trinigan.
I think what she's saying is that it should probably be a neutral site, if that makes sense, away from, because October 6th would be fun time. And so we have a separate meeting to discuss this at a neutral site, not at one of our scheduled. Is that all right?
Yes.
Can I want to be sure what it is I'm voting on. And I don't mind another meeting, and I don't mind where it is, but what is it we're doing at that meeting?
As I take it, it'd be a workshop.
I'm sorry.
As I take it, it'd be essentially a workshop where the public, of course, is invited to give input, but it's really where we roll up our sleeves and we would have the technology, at least at the Board of Supervisors chambers, since we all have computers there, to be able to
Draw the maps.
yeah, again, drawing maps or taking those maps that have been given to us in consideration. I understand Commissioner King's concern, and I'm trying to, as I said before, the same thing, but I think we do need to have a time where we can at least try to, attack the problem to begin with.
So at that meeting, we'd have some community submissions, but not all, presumably. That is our first opportunity to draw, because we've got a statute in the server that restricts us from doing that before the end of September.
Yes, so the first time maps can be released would be September 27th, but because this is compliant with the notice requirements under the Elections Code and Brown Act, you need to essentially have 5 days after that. So you're now talking about early October.
Gotcha. So the concern I have is that, I don't want at the beginning of the process, beginning of the drawing process, we will have met 10 times or so at that point, to kind of Bigfoot community input by having something that becomes an official commission map too early in the process. And if we sit down and start drawing, my concern is that we're gonna have the perception that we've already adopted a map with some 10 or so meetings left to go after that. And I honestly think it'd be better if we just keep getting submissions to choose among, and maybe wait a little longer to manipulate those maps ourselves.
If I could just clarify, under the current adopted schedule, the commission by the November 2nd meeting needs to have voted on the 2 or more maps that they want to recommend to the Board of Supervisors, because those last meetings are with the Board of Supervisors. And under the Elections Code, the Board of Supervisors is required to hold at least 3 public hearings before they do the final adoption of the map. So just to clarify that for the commission.
Thank you, Mr.
And I do think, as Ms. Server said, that it's not just one map, it's a minimum of 2 that the board is requesting, which means we could actually recommend 2 or 3 or more. So it's not that we're just trying to come up with a map.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you very much.
And I would like to suggest that through outreach, if we choose to calendar this additional meeting, just make it very public within our outreach that, we're open to suggestions, it's open to public comment, although it's held in what we will determine as a neutral location. All public comment would be considered and encouraged to help us.
I mean, I'd be willing to amend the motion to maybe say not before the 2nd week of October, maybe, and so we'd have a little bit of maybe at least 1 meeting, if not 2, to get some presentations that's a little more helpful.
So what we're contemplating is a meeting in October, but it doesn't have to be before these previously calendared October meetings?
That's the way I would,
So essentially, the motion is, and I don't want to put words in Commissioner Hazel's mouth, but this is a question, not a comment, but we're adding a meeting sometime in October in San Bernardino, which is great, where we're going to, I'm going to use the word manipulate, but work on the maps in public as a group, which we have to do at some point, toward coming up with at least 2, but maybe more than 2 maps.
Commissioner Little, I would even suggest that we do it at the beginning part of November, after the November 2nd meeting. That way we have collected all the data from all the communities that we've met with, including all those maps, but it gives us an opportunity that we're not in a selected city, that we then have all of our collected data. And, as Judge King said, we could work with the technical assistance on this so that we understand all of that piece between then and now. But we come together at that point to look at everything that we have and then come forward with that recommendation to the supervisors. Because if we don't do that, we're going to be in Ontario, the museum, and then say, okay, we either have a marathon meeting there, which I'm fine with also, my city, or, we come back and sit down and put it all out on a work board and say, now we're going to come up with the 2, 3, 4 maps that we're going to hand off to the supervisors, that they then have the meetings on the 9th, the 16th, and the 7th.
Okay, you got me, that makes a total amount of sense, I just.
Okay.
I
know I'm talking on the mics.
No, I appreciate it. I was worried we're gonna do an October 1 meeting before we've gotten all the submissions in and start moving stuff, but okay.
Just want collective time and space that we can meet as the commissioners and go through everything and say, now this is what, these last 3-4 months have been about.
Sounds great.
Well,
Thank you
So
very much.
now I'm on a little different side of this, only in the sense that if we wait until that date, then we will only have one date for the public to come in and discuss what we've done. I just don't think that's enough, but,
Yeah, I feel we need the time operationally to start addressing this so that we understand as a group what we're doing.
Do that too.
Well, we may have to have two.
Yes, sir.
Okay. After the further, yes, Judge.
So the contemplation is then, in the month of October, we presently have 4 meetings, one every 7 days, that we would add 2 more within that schedule. Is that what you're contemplating? 2 more in the San Bernardino County Chambers?
My
So we would
suggestion
have
is that we have
6.
one in November at the end, when we have collected all the data, but I also agree.
Well, at the-
And
Excuse me.
between November 2nd and November 9th, we add a meeting date, that I also agree that we probably need to have that technical piece to it earlier, so that we understand how to draw and what we're drawing, so that we can continue to collect that data and
Okay, but if
have
I
some
understand.
intelligence on it.
If I understood correctly, council indicated that we have to have voted on 2 maps by the 2nd of November, correct?
That is correct based upon the current schedule, because, and there really isn't that much room to move that later, because you need to have voted on the 2 or more maps by no later than 5 days before November 9th. I'm sorry, I don't have a calendar in front of me as to whether that hits a weekend, but that's because we need to properly agendize the meeting with that the Board of Supervisors is going to have. And so I just make you aware of that. So you were talking about early November. I'm not sure there's time there. It looks like it's really, if the decision is to add anything, it would need to be in October somewhere.
Okay.
and
Thank you.
I'll go back to, what we've been told, and I witnessed this, 10 years ago when the Board of Supervisors did this with an Indian commission, that until those draft maps went out, there was not any input. And then when they came out, I can't remember exactly, but I know there were at least 2 meetings that the board had in public, and then there was a lot of input. But until there's something to give input on, there's just, I think, a reticence by the public to come out and just comment generally. And so I would push for something, much earlier. That's my
Commissioner,
opinion.
would it make sense then to just add an agendized?
Commissioner, would it make sense then if we just add to the agenda and a line item that allows for us to do group line drawing session then, because I think that's what the collective thought process was. So if we add that to our agendas through the month of October, starting with the meeting on the 6th, then it gives us an opportunity then for us as a commission to do some draft maps.
I think we would have to take into consideration where we would be meeting if we're not going to be meeting at the county chambers because of technology.
That was my concern, because I don't think we could do it in a space like this.
Yes, I'm correct. And that to be honest, I don't know what technology we would have available or need. So I'd like to actually ask Mr. Rexroad, what would be your suggestion when we're planning or contemplating these ideas of what type of technology we should have available to us?
Well, so Fabian and I do this on Zoom all the time, right? And so it could be, I think the key thing is being able to have visuals available so you all can see probably his computer available easily. So it looks to me, actually, you might have a monitor there that I can't actually see.
We do, yes.
But, so this room might actually work, but it's most importantly is for you all to be able to see a monitor where you can see the map and be able to say, let's start in Ontario and let's work our way out, or let's start in the Apple Valley and work our way, whatever direction you want to do. But that's the key thing, is for you all to be able to see the map easily and be able to articulate how you want the building of the district to go. And then eventually it's like, well, no, let's reconsider. We would prefer that Fontana go east or west or whatever direction you decide you want it to go.
So theoretically, we don't all need access to a mouse and a keyboard. We could have one person kind of, and then we could guide someone through it if the visuals were available for everyone in the room?
So I believe, yes, and that would be my recommendation, as opposed to you all having, talk about group line drawing sessions. My vision there is that, you know, Fabian come up here, or wherever he would be with his computer, and you say, well, look, let's talk about, you know, where Ontario needs to be, and we work our way out from there. I mean, I would just tell you that there's only 5 districts, right? And so this isn't and the lines have to come from the outside and they work their way in. And so it's not overly complicated to be able to do it. Your decisions are really going to come down, and where most of the discussion traditionally comes down on is, you know, do we really want to put the line right there? Should it be a freeway or a park? Or we've heard testimony contrary to this, so maybe we should balance that out. And you all have to have those discussions in among yourselves and direct Fabian or Eddie and I to put a line someplace. And as you mentioned, what really happens is once that line's placed, that's when people tend to get, you know, they tend to get more agitated or more interested in this process because there's a line on the map, right? Right now, it's all theoretical.
Okay, so, and then I just want to clarify from my knowledge with Ms. Williams, with the outreach, people are able to submit input or feedback, like through email or whatnot, and that is submitted to the commission.
That is correct. So in your meeting folders, each meeting you have, if there is public comment submitted, which if there were maps submitted, they'd be included in your folder.
Okay, so therefore, my thinking on that is that we don't necessarily need to be in the same location as someone to have their input or their feedback to take into consideration. Such that we don't have to be in their city or where they're, you know, able to come in person.
Excuse me, Vice Chair, I'm sorry, we had a motion and a second, and we never had a vote on it.
Right.
Had some discussion, so I'm not sure if we want to have, you know, a revision of the motion or withdrawal or a vote on the motion.
Okay.
But I don't want that to get lost in the meeting progression.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke. So at this time, I think I will open it up to the commissioners on whether we want to carry on with the motion or amend it or withdraw it.
Would you mind repeating specifically what you're referring to as the motion?
Okay, the motion is, I understand it. Oh, Ms.
If
McKenna.
I could repeat what I think I have the motion as, so we had a motion by Commissioner Crutchfield to add a meeting to the commission in the county chambers, and then seconded by Commissioner Basley, but Commissioner Basley recommended an amendment to say that we would not meet before the second week of October. So if that's still the amended motion, is Commissioner Jernigan agreeable with that amendment? If that's the amendment currently on the table.
I think it was Commissioner Crutchfield that made the motion, or?
Or Jernigan, it was Commissioner Jernigan.
And my amendment, I think it wasn't a revision, it was more of a clarification that we really can't do it before October anyways. That was, so I haven't, my second stands as
A friendly amendment to it.
yeah.
Okay. So the amendment that I think we have is a meeting after October 6th, not before the second week of October, to hold a meeting in the county chambers to have a meeting to be able to practice drawing the maps.
Yes, there could be further discussion, but I don't want that motion and second to be lost.
Okay, so should we open the floor for a vote, or should we continue the discussion on that amended motion?
Well, one question.
Yes, Commissioner
Should
Trujillo?
we address the date that we have this meeting?
I thought the date was suggested to be after the 6th,
I know, but there's
correct?
After the
be 7th, 8th. What actual date?
Ms. Williams, I believe we would need to probably check for availability.
I will need to check for availability in the board chambers. If there is a week that the commission has a preference, we'll take that into consideration.
Okay, so I would like to just open it up for suggestions on a week that would be feasible for the commission. Does anyone have any suggestions?
Well, since we have a Wednesday meeting scheduled, the 13th, possibly could we do this on the 14th,
Which would be a Thursday.
which would be a Thursday?
So we're looking at the week of the 11th? Is that correct? I don't have a calendar.
Yes, yes.
Week of the 11th? So would we like to add that to the amended motion that it could possibly be the week of the 11th, depending on availability at the chambers?
Does that work?
Yes. So do I amend my motion to, for the week of the 11th, to have this meeting?
I'd second that. And then-
So we have a motion and a second. So we'll go ahead with a vote. All in favor, please say, oh, I'm sorry.
Is there any public comment?
There are three public comments. This is a direction to the commission, so it is, the public comment would be for this item.
Okay, so before we vote, we need to take the public comment? Is that correct?
I would recommend that.
I'm sorry?
I would recommend that.
Okay, I apologize. I don't want
No
to
problem.
forget the public comment. I just got caught up in the motion. So I'm going to go ahead and call up the first person. I'm sorry, the last name is Camacho. Thank you, Ms. Camacho.
My glasses up. There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioners. I would just like to request that these group line drawings that are being discussed in this additional meeting or additional meetings, as you may consider is necessary for the commission to be able to draw maps and look at maps and also take in in consideration the input, the public input, if those could be made public and available on Zoom meetings so that people can either attend or maybe at least attend via virtual. So I would like to request that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
For clarification to the public, all meetings of the commission are public meetings open to the public and will be on the redistricting website.
And then we'll be live streaming, correct?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Thank you. And for the record, ma'am, would you be able to state your name? I apologize.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's you, Beck Camacho.
Thank you, we just couldn't quite make it out.
Sorry, I just.
Thank you. Okay, we also have a second person, resident that would like to speak, so I would like to call up James Albert.
Hello, Commissioners. James Albert, 3rd District constituent, member of the League of Women Voters of San Bernardino area. We're definitely taking this redistricting process at the national to the local level very seriously. So I commend your work in trying to promote a transparent process. One of the things that I want to uplift is how well the State Redistricting Commission is actually engaging the IE communities, Riverside and San Bernardino counties, through their COI hearing process. They've held 2 COI hearings specifically for this region through Zoom. And it was a fairly simple process, a lot of participation, and I think it's something that maybe can be, reasonably folded into or merged with this county, because it's already been said that our county is obviously very vast, and it definitely, I think, could work. And I've seen how during the Board of Supervisors meetings, even if it is an centrally located location, engaging, the location with the Yucca Valley location, engaging the High Desert location would also help. But I definitely would encourage us to look into how the State Redistricting Commission is engaging this community already, and using those best practices that have already been applied. I just want to also uplift that it would be nice if this workshop style meeting was in the evening time or on a weekend to start to build that trust and engagement that we desperately need in this process. So thank you so much for the consideration.
Thank you for your comments. At this time, do we have any further comment on this motion or discussion?
No, Madam Vice Chair.
So I would like to open it up to the commissioners for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please. Aye. All opposed, please. Please say no. I'm sorry. I froze.
Madam Vice Chair, just for the record, the oral record, I would like to correct that I had incorrectly stated that Commissioner Jordan had motioned, but it was Commissioner Crutchfield. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Hearing no opposition, so the motion was approved. And moved into the next item on the agenda. Pamela Williams is now available to receive direction from the commission regarding topics the commission would like to discuss at future commission meetings.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. If there is any additional direction that the commission would like to give to staff, now is your time.
So, commissioners, does anyone have direction for Ms. Williams?
Yeah.
Oh, Commissioner Bezell?
Yeah, if we could get an update on where we are for outreach and for the community groups. How much response we've had from them, and maybe, some of the names of the groups to see where we are in that process, to make sure we've included everybody, or as many people as possible.
No problem. I will provide a report on outreach at the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to ask that Ms. Williams, when looking to schedule this additional meeting that we have just moved on, that we do take in consideration of Mr. Albert's suggestion that it be an evening or weekend meeting if available. That being said, do any of the commissioners or alternate commissioners have any other direction they would like to offer?
Yes, at the last meeting, I had a question that was directed to be handled. Now, it's been handled with me personally, but I think the rest of you should understand the information I requested, what the answer was. Can you make that presentation to the rest of the commissioners?
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
Hi. So the question that had come up was whether or not Native Americans were counted and where they were being presented on the sheets that we had provided for the commission that broke out populations. The census does indeed count Native American populations, and it counts them as reported by the individual, and then it also counts people living on reservations, and it also counts people who are reporting that they are Native American living on a reservation, and people reporting white, black, other living on reservations. More importantly, the number for those Native American individuals that's reported by the census are lumped in with the rest of the grouping in other, not in Hispanic. So the document we originally gave you that has them broken out with Hispanic, Black, and Asian, then we added other as per requested. Native American is in that other grouping as well. So the numbers are counted in there.
Thank you, Mr. Valdez, for your input and feedback on Commissioner Anderson's question.
Commissioner, I would just like to clarify on the request by Commissioner Basley for a report on outreach. Because of the timing of our next meeting being on Tuesday, that agenda has already been posted. So that report can be given at the following meeting where it can be appropriately agendized.
That's fine, I have no problem.
Thank you, Ms. Herman. Is there any other direction for Ms. Williams from the commissioners or alternate commissioners? Okay, I don't see anyone. Do we have any requests for public comment in regard to direction from the staff of Ms. Williams?
No, we do not.
Thank you.
May I clarify, do we need a motion for the direction that was given by the commissioners for the request of the report? And then also for scheduling the meeting in the evening?
Yes, clerk, thank you. That would be best if we could have a motion and a second for those two items.
I would move that in the meeting, for the meeting of the 15th, September 15th, that we would receive a report on our efforts for outreach and what groups, community groups of interest have either signed up or acknowledged that we're conducting meetings, so our efforts for outreach.
Thank you, Commissioner Gazelle. Is there a second for this motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no.
May I clarify, was it Commissioner Crefeld that seconded?
Yes.
Thank you.
Apologize. Okay. Ms. Sermon?
And then a second motion regarding the timing of the additional meeting that will be the week of October 11th.
Okay. Can I get a motion to have the week of the meeting, the week of the October 11th be in the evening or weekend as available?
For clarification, this is the additional meeting held at the County Government Center?
Yes. Yes, this would be the additional meeting that will be held at the County Government Center.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Crefeld. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Jurgen. All in favor, please say aye.
Just for discussion between the motion and the vote. I don't mind the evening meetings, they're actually more convenient for me, but and I'm sure they're more convenient for the public, but I also want to point out that it's difficult. It presents some complexity, which we can overcome, but staff has to be here, they work all day, and then they come here. We have to find locations. I know this particular motion relates to the county government office, it's a little bit easier. But, Rialto was very nice to host us tonight. It's not always easy, so I just tell the public, we try to get as many evening meetings as we can. I'm happy to do a weekend one personally if we have to, or under any circumstances, but just understand that it's not always as easy to do a 6 p.m. meeting because the staff requirements, the technology requirements, our consultants, travel plans, and that sort of thing. So I'm happy to vote yes. Evening meetings are great, but just understand that as we made this schedule, we reached our statutory obligation for evening meetings, or we will reach it. But please understand there's other constraints other than just when we're going to meet.
Thank you, Commissioner Little. That was brought to the Commission's attention early on in this process that it was not, many towns and cities that were hosting were not available in the evenings, unfortunately, and that's why we have to hold so many daytime meetings. So we'd just like to make the public aware that we are trying to be as accommodating with schedules as possible. And I'd like to just remind everyone that we're open to email, and all meetings are live streamed on the Redistricting website, and it would encourage the public to participate that way when possible. So should we vote now? Take another vote? Okay.
Yes.
I apologize. So in regard to this motion to hold an additional meeting the week of October 11th for the purpose of a workshop to have a group line drawing session at the County Government Center in San Bernardino. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. I believe, and I'm going to check in with Ms. Server, those were the two recommendations that we needed to make motions on.
Yes, those were the two items that were discussed under direction, further direction to staff, and unless the commission had additional directions that they'd like to provide the staff. I believe that completes that item.
Okay, thank you. Just open it one more time up to the commissioners and alternate commissioners if anyone has any other further direction they would like to give Ms. Williams. Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on. At this time, we will call for general public comment. Thank you. Commissioner Little? The first person we would like to call is Lupe Camacho.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. My public comment for today, I just wanted to provide my community of interest. This is the first meeting I've attended, due mostly to the fact that I work and very busy and a mother and everything. I live in Rialto. I'm a Rialto resident, have been a Rialto resident for over 25 years. This is the first time I've been fortunate enough to have an opportunity to participate in this process. And so I wanted to voice my community of interest. My community of interest is the Latino population, the Hispanic population. We are now in our county of San Bernardino, a little over 53% of the actual population here in our county of San Bernardino. So I would just like to let the commissioners know that that is my community of interest, and that I would like to see my community of interest proportionally represented throughout the districts as you go through and make your decisions and look at the maps and see what input is brought in. Of course, you've got many other things that you need to take into consideration, but we are 53%, over 53% of the community here in the county. And I think it's, usually when you pass that threshold of 50%, it is a good practice to take a look at that and hopefully find an amenable way for being able to proportionally have that representation of those individuals in the various districts, so that, proportionally in every district, we have a proportional amount of what is now 53% of our community here in the San Bernardino County. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. I would like to welcome James Albert to speak.
Just wanted to say thank you, Commissioners, for your support on striving for inclusive meetings going forward. Something to also think about too is looking at the calendar with the two upcoming evening meetings in Chino Hills in Ontario. I think definitely the public and community groups would definitely be supportive of having those as workshop style meetings already, since it's already on the books, and a better use of everyone's time to see how we can work together on engaging the public that way. My community of interest, I want to uplift. I live in the city of San Bernardino. Lived there for over 21 years. Moved out from LA when I was younger. I've seen recently with the great expansion of our airport. I definitely want to see that the airport and the surrounding nearby residential community surrounding it, as well as the traffic coming in and out, is included in a district to make sure that whoever our representatives are have a balanced and equitable perspective in terms of the stakeholders that are going to be impacted by that. So I'd just like to hope you can take that into consideration. And again, going forward, I'm definitely would like to work with you on public engagement and seeing how we can get more people involved in these meetings. Because like people have already said, I'm having issues with the technology and submitting the maps virtually that way. So I definitely prefer this style of meeting, but I know that a lot of people who would like to be here tonight in person can't because of the surge of COVID-19 right now. So let's see how we can all work together through these troubling times. So thank you all very much for this evening.
Thank you for your comments. At this time, I would like to ask Rafael Trujillo to come up and speak.
Hi, good evening. I'm your city council member, Rafael Trujillo, right here from our great city of Rialto. I just wanted to welcome you to our city. About 10 years ago, I was involved with trying to help LULAC put together their maps. And so my area of interest is obviously this region. And we were able to put 2 Latino CVAP districts 10 years ago. The only thing was submitted at the last minute and wasn't really considered. So I'm hoping that you have a goal of trying to create districts for the protected communities in our county, and that you would continue kind of looking at the LULAC map from 10 years ago to really think about how you're going to be able to protect the Latino community, which is growing dramatically in our county. I learned, even being here in Rialto, the demographics are just shifting dramatically. I was in this community where it was 50% Latino at the beginning, and now it's roughly 75%. So a lot is changing in the county. It's changed a lot since I've been here 10 years ago, and we started drawing some maps. And I ask that you consider creating districts that really protect these protected communities that we talk about. So thank you so much. And again, welcome. If you'd like to come back, we'd welcome you with open arms. We have a lot of residents with a lot of input, and we'd really like to kind of work closely with you in this region. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Madam Secretary, is there any more public comment?
No, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask if any of the commission members or alternate commissioners have any comments? Yes, Commissioner Gazelle.
Yeah, I wanted to join Commissioner Little in thanking the City of Rialto to make this available for us, this forum, and also for the City Council member to join us. And of course, the staff. I see the clerk of the council here also at this hour, so I appreciate that staff is also here. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Gazelle. Do any of the other commissioners or alternate commissioners have any comment? Yes, Commissioner Little.
We got a couple written correspondences from the public too, and I do want to tell people out there that we do read these. I'm sure we all read all of them. There was one I have a question for staff about. We got a nice email from Sky Allen, who's the Director of Programs for IE United, and her proposal is to postpone our redistricting deadline. I assume that's, we talked earlier in this meeting about the beginning of the process. And I wanted some direction about the end of the process, if it's even in our, I wouldn't mind extending it, but I wonder if it's in our power to extend the deadline as late as the writer suggests we do.
Commissioner, it is not. The deadline is December 15th. That deadline is set by state law, and there is any change in that deadline would have to be something proposed and approved by the state legislature and signed by the governor. That change in that deadline is not within the authority of either the commission or the board of supervisors.
Okay, I appreciate that. I also want to thank Ms. Allen for the letter. I just want to make it be clear that even if we wanted to grant this continuance, it doesn't, for this deadline, it isn't possible. So in that spirit, I would say if you're a member of the public concerned about our process, start paying attention now, because we're doing this in the next couple or 3 months and we won't be able to go back. December 15th?
Yes, the deadline is December 15th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Little and Ms. Serber, for clarification. Do the commissioners or alternate commissioners have any other comment?
Yes.
Yes. Judge King.
According to the letter, it indicates that they're in front of the California Supreme Court seeking this extension. So I assume they're not looking to legislative action, but something through the courts that perhaps could have ramifications on our deadline, you know?
It is my understanding that what is in front of the state, in front of the Supreme Court, is dealing with the statewide redistricting and not individual local county jurisdictions.
The letter asks us to follow the leadership of the state Supreme Court, and I would say if they have a ruling that requires us to do that, we will comply with it.
As I stated, the deadline is driven by current, the current elections code.
Yeah.
And that has not been changed by, to my knowledge, by any court.
But apparently the Supreme Court has not acted on their request at this point. Is that your understanding? That's what she seems to suggest.
To my knowledge, that is correct.
That is correct.
Thank you, Judge King. Is there any further comment for the commissioners or alternate commissioners? Okay, seeing none, I would like to adjourn this meeting of the Advisory Redistricting Commission. The next scheduled meeting will be Tuesday, September 7th at 1 p.m. at the Upland Council Chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Make sure I don't forget my phone.
No, I appreciate it.